Welcome everybody to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host for the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. Oh yeah. Welcome back everybody to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm super duper excited to introduce Ryan Rae Harbuck. She is a writer up and coming that's going to be talking about her whole life story. She's had an incredible journey, and I'm really grateful to have her here on A Little Less Fear podcast. Welcome, Ryan Rae Harbuck.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lino. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And also appreciate you accommodating the time difference. I think you're probably about 3 or 4 hours ahead of me. You're in the future. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Well,
So, Ryan, I'm curious. A lot of my listeners know that I have a book coming out actually next week, and my book is about a lot of the things that I've gone through with my genetic disease and having disabilities and stuff. And I found that we have similar commonalities. What got you to even start writing in general, and how long ago did you start writing? What inspired you to start writing?
So I probably began writing about 15 years ago. And there wasn't this like pivotal moment of my life where I was like, I need to write a book. I just started writing down the stories that I had been sharing with others, peers. And also I was a teacher at the time. And so my students, and I was a swim coach at the time. And so my athletes, there was all these stories that I felt that I had to share because they all had a lot of meaning and purpose and a lot of lessons in them. And so I just started from there, really. And the stories have evolved over the last 15 years, as you can imagine. A lot of things have changed. And things have been added that I didn't see for myself at the time when I started. And it's been really, really beautiful and really, really reflective.
I can imagine. And what type of stories did you write back then, 15 years ago?
Well, so I would say that the most notable story of mine is the story of my car accident. I'm a paraplegic and I use a wheelchair all 100% of the time. I'm completely paralyzed from about my rib cage down. And when I was 16, I was in a car accident, and it was actually a very, well publicized event. It was 6 kids coming back from a high school dance, and our car rolled and hit traffic coming the other way on a highway, and everybody was injured. We had 2 fatalities in that accident. It was a really big deal. And so obviously that has been a big deal for me. I do have to be honest though, I have no memory of the accident whatsoever. And so I have very little emotional ties to it. It's almost like somebody once told me a story and then I started telling that story. But obviously it was very life-changing. And, I went from a high school junior who, my biggest worry was that I had to get up early to go to swim practice and my hair was wet to go to class, and then all of a sudden I had no use of my legs. My boyfriend at the time that I was at the dance with, he died instantly in the car accident. There was a lot of things. And and I'm really excited to be on your podcast because it really made me think about your whole concept of a little less fear. And I've been really thinking a lot lately about that concept of fear and what is that?
Right.
What are the fears that I've had in my life? And it was really, it made me realize that at that time when I probably should have been the most afraid of everything, I wasn't really. And I think that a lot of it was my age. I was a stupid, naive teenager, and all I really wanted to do was keep up with my friends. And so that's what my focus was. It was like, well, how do I get back to, hanging out at lunch with my friends at school? Mm-hmm. That's like what my brain went to. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is devastating. I can't walk. What else can't I do? Blah, blah, blah. And so that fear factor, I think probably the real only fear that I felt during that time was just feeling a little isolated and a little bit like, oh shoot, I can't be a wallflower anymore in my biology class like I used to be. All of a sudden, everybody knew who I was, knew what had happened, knew my story. And even if they didn't, they clearly saw me roll into, a room in a wheelchair. And so I was a very, very visible change, a very visible reminder of my accident. And I still am to this day on some
Hmm.
level.
It reminds me of a story when I was in high school. I had a good friend, and he was involved also in a car accident with, I believe, 5 people, and he passed away. And I was really, I was really heartbroken by that. He was a good friend of mine, and he was only 15, and our last names both started with M.A. So I would always look in the back, and he wasn't sitting behind me anymore. And I remember going from period after period, and it hurting me for all through junior year and even until I graduated from high school. It's still hard to talk about, even though I'm going to be 42 now, and it's so long ago. But I mean, I'm wondering, how did you grieve the loss of your boyfriend, or did you even allow yourself to grieve? Because when you're in high school, there's so much going on all at once. It's like, did you ever get to grieve, or what happened there?
I think about that a lot, and I think about I think my grieving came out in different ways in different times during my life. I don't think I did a lot of grieving when it initially happened. Like, I actually have a pretty clear memory of laying in the hospital and kind of waking up and asking what had happened. And I asked that to, I don't know if it was my family, the doctors, but I do remember asking it thinking, oh, I should ask this question, but I already knew. I already knew everything that had happened. And so on some level, I was like, I was conscious enough
Hmm.
for enough of the time to know that he had died and that I was paralyzed and stuff. But I remember lying there, feeling like I have to ask this question because that's what you do, you know?
What's interesting is you don't remember, yet you knew what happened.
Yeah, yeah.
What do
You
you
know,
make of that?
well, your brain is so powerful. It protected me. It protected me that night. I could have really horrible memories and flashbacks from that event,
Right,
and I don't. And it's just my brain protecting me, and I guess I kind of appreciate that.
right. Yeah, the brain does have ways, the mind has ways to protect trauma so that you don't relive it. And that's really fascinating that, I mean, it's great that you don't remember that. I'm curious about the process that you went through in the hospital. How long were you in the hospital after the accident?
So I was pretty banged up. Not only did I have a spinal cord injury and was paralyzed, I broke almost everything else. I collapsed my lungs. I was in the hospital for over 3 months, and
Wow.
yeah, and so it was, a lot of it was starting from scratch again. It was a month that I sat in an ICU unit just on a ventilator trying to survive. And then it wasn't until, the following month and month after that, that it was really like learning about this new life that I was going to have in a wheelchair and how to navigate that, and what that was truly going to be like for me.
Did you ever go through a grieving process of what you had gone through, as far as like, well, now I can't walk? Did you ever go through that, or did you just keep going? Be like, you know what? Let's just keep going. Let's just keep hustling through this.
I think both. I think both. I mean, so my accident happened when I was a junior in high school. I went back to school for my senior year, kind of part time and just enough to graduate. But then I went directly to college. And, college is hard, people. You're trying to figure out who you are and you're
Oh
independent,
yeah.
but you're not really. And so I think there were a lot of really hard moments, but at the same time, a lot of really great moments of learning. I often tell people that my struggles are also my victories, because anytime
Yes.
that I've really had to struggle and be challenged, I've come out of it, and I
Yeah, yeah.
apologize for that.
So, what kind of advice do you give people when people come to you and they're down, and you kind of look at them and you're like, well, things could be worse. I mean, how do you help your friends or your family or people that come to you and be like, dude, how do you do this? Because it's like my life, I'm challenged with just this, and you've gone through this. Have you had to explain to people or give advice on things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it always comes back to your perspective of
Right.
the world. And
Hmm.
especially when I'm talking to, younger adolescents or teenagers, is they don't
Yeah.
understand the power that you have over your life, and that,
Right.
what you see for yourself and what you see the world as, that's exactly what it is. No, and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks outside of you. Like if you look out the window and you see beauty in that really horrid storm, like then it is beautiful because you
Hmm.
think it's beautiful. Like that's what it is. And so, I think that that really is the big piece. I think that has always kind of kept me going, kept me positive, kept me being able to accomplish things, is just having the perspective that I can do things and things are beautiful, and taking the moment to really appreciate little things and little triumphs that I have for myself. I think that's really like the take home for everything.
That is a take home for everything, for sure. The little triumphs they're not little, they're big.
Yeah.
They're really big triumphs. And then, so, if I'm not mistaken, you have a baby? You have a child?
I, I have two children. I have a 7-year-old boy and a 2.5-year-old boy.
Are these babies that you had on your own, or did you adopt them, or how did this
No, so
happen?
I had these two babies on my own.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was okay. So if we're going to talk about fear, there was fear there.
I can't imagine. Tell me your fears. What was your fear with having a child and being a paraplegic? Because that's an amazing accomplishment.
Well, I think so much of it was that there was so much unknown, especially going into my first child.
Yeah,
Immediately after I found out I was pregnant, I went and Googled all sorts of things and came up with nothing.
yeah,
No sources about women being paralyzed and pregnant, and what that might do to my body, or what that might do to just different parts of me. And then really it ended up being, the biggest piece of it was I going to know I was in labor? And nobody could
right.
answer that for me. And so that was really the most scary piece of being pregnant, was just going along trusting my body to tell me that I was in labor. And I will, a spoiler alert, I did not know I was in labor when I was in labor.
And so what happened? Your water just broke, and then that's when you knew that you were in labor?
Actually. So I had I was extremely lucky, and I thank the universe a million times for this. But so I my water had broken, and I didn't know, because at that point, like, there's a lot of fluid happening a lot of times for pregnant ladies, and I had a normal routine appointment scheduled that morning. I had actually coached a practice from like 7 to 8:30. Went to an appointment at nine
You were
o'clock.
still coaching?
Uh-huh. And
Wow.
and the whole time my poor doctor kept telling me, like, you're going to be fine, you're going to know, your body's going to tell you, you're going to go all the way. And I was about 38 weeks pregnant at that point, and she's like, well, let's go ahead and do an exam and see where you're at, but I think you're fine. And no joke, minutes later she said, I feel hair, you need to go.
Whoa.
So
Wow.
and he was born about 5 hours after that.
What? That fast?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
C-section.
No, I actually, yeah, I know. And that's the thing, is like, you just don't know, and you try things, and I was able to push just enough, and he's great.
And did you feel any pain?
So I didn't. And the entire time I was hooked up to the monitor, they would say, like, here's a contraction coming, and nothing, absolutely nothing.
So when you're pushing and you have no pain, were you able to feel the pressure of some?
Yeah. And so
Okay.
so being paralyzed, everybody's a little bit different, and there's different sensations that you may slightly feel, not feel,
Hmm.
even hypersensitive. And
Yeah, everybody's nerves are different. Yeah.
and so I do have like some pressure sensation, um, all the way down to my knees, really. But beyond that, like that's it. And so, you know, like, yeah, it's great that I don't really feel pain, but that also, you know, the pain's there for a reason. Pain is there to tell you that there's something wrong and you need to
Yeah.
fix it. And so that's actually gotten me in trouble in a lot of times. And I've been hospitalized because I can't feel pain, you
Like
know.
what? What's happened?
I've had numerous wounds that have either gotten infected or gotten so bad they've gotten to the bone just because I didn't know and it didn't hurt. And you know, I had a moment in college where I was on spring break with a friend and she had to drive me from Las Vegas all the way back to Colorado just so I could check into the hospital because I knew something was wrong. And I stayed in the hospital for the next week. There was a time when I was teaching, I was a full-time teacher, and I got an infected wound that they just couldn't identify. And I was in bed for over 8 months,
Oh,
lying in bed for 8 months. I had to quit teaching
oof.
fully. At that time, I had, you know, a small one bedroom house up in the mountains, and I just laid there for 8 months by myself. You know, I'd have visitors come, and that sometimes that was almost worse because it was like, oh, you guys get to live and I'm stuck here. And there, at that point, there was no end in sight because it was like we didn't know when this wound was going to heal, if it was going to heal, if I needed surgery. And I ended up having to get surgery, and that helped kind of accelerate things. And I was finally able to get out of bed. But, you know, and kind of thinking about the parts of your story I've read too is like you've had a lot of health concerns,
Yes.
and that's where I think ultimately if I were to name something that I'm afraid of, it's my health. And
Yeah.
I think that whenever you have a true health scare, like that takes everything away from you. It doesn't matter who you are, how famous, how rich you are. Like if you don't have your health, you have nothing.
Oh yeah, I remember one time after I had my bladder taken my urinary bladder removed. I remember laying in the hospital. I was there for 16 days and I'm not a TV watcher, so I'm lost in thought a lot. And I remember thinking, you know what? I can have $1 billion right now. I can have 5 Bentleys. I can have the best everything in the career, but nothing matters right now because I can't do anything. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and even if I wanted to make a decision to donate, I don't even have the mental capacity, the energy right now to even think it, to even rationalize how to donate money. Like it just really puts you on pause.
It does. Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you did you have any experiences as far as like with your higher self at the time when you were alone, as far as like your inner growth, your spirituality? Did you find a different purpose to life? I mean, what kind of growth did you go through? Because I mean, obviously I'm seeing you smile and you have incredible glasses and great style, so there was some type of something was shining still inside you. What was lighting you up?
Well, you know, I think there's when you're at that low, really dark self that everybody has somewhere in them, and
Yeah.
perhaps they don't have the you know the things that happen to them that makes them find those dark pieces of themselves, but everybody has them. And I think that the having those come out and having you have to actually sit with them and be that dark person really gives you the opportunity to go for a full circle and really, you know, remember what life is about and remember what you have and what you can do. And you know, I started, there was a long moment. I actually have wrote a story about it, about talking to a spider on my wall, and that was like my friend that, you know,
That's
just
awesome.
was kind of like the thing that I needed at that moment. And I just needed somebody to listen that wasn't going to talk back to me.
Yeah.
and and I think that, you know, finally I kind of came out of it and I started making lists of things I wanted to do, things I wanted to be, how I wanted to be, where I wanted to be, what I was going to do. And, you know, and it made me excited to live again. You know, it was like, someday I'm going to live again and look at all these lists, look at all these things I'm going to do and accomplish. And I think that that's kind of how I pulled out of it really to start.
And was that those like 8 months of darkness when you were alone? I'm assuming that was before the babies.
Yeah, it was. It was long before I'd met my husband. You know, I was just living by myself, like I said, up in the mountains. I was a full-time teacher. Um, and, you know, I had a good social circle, but and then family around, but it's not the same when they, someone can come over, talk to you for a couple minutes, an hour, and then they leave, and nobody really understands what that feels like, being so alone and just stuck. So
No, they don't. And even sometimes to this day, I still sometimes get a little brokenhearted or jealous is the word, or however you want to say it, when I see people can just pee normally. I'm like, I have to catheterize every 3 hours. Like, they have no idea what that's going to be like for the rest of my life.
right.
And it's like, and then I'm always dependent on my medical supplies. And it's like every time I get a shipment, it's like Christmas for me. I'm like, yeah, my medical supplies are here. And it's like people don't know the small little victories like that that make me, I guess, who I am today. Who the little things that make me happy are the things that keep me surviving.
Right.
And yeah, you know what? One thing that I haven't found yet in my life, at least since I've been disabled the last 10 years, is love. And I feel that a lot of the times I find myself a little insecure about my scars, insecure about my stoma, insecure that I'm gonna pee on myself every night. And what if I'm sleeping with someone? And I know that I need to throw these insecurities away. And when I meet someone like you that I met has love and that even had children now, what kind of advice can you give me and other people who have disabled or even don't have disabilities, people or just have fears in general that they won't find love? I mean, how did it happen for you?
Oh man, it's such a great
Actually,
story.
first, Ryan, I have a first question. Did you have the same insecurities that I have? Like
Oh,
who's
absolutely.
okay? I'm like,
100%. And yeah, and there would be absolutely no denying that. I, everything that you just said, I can echo a million times over. Like I've got these like tiny atrophied legs that get, swollen and they're cold, and and I have to catheterize myself as well, and a lot of different other things. And so yeah, the total worries with that. And there have been a lot of relationships that I had that didn't work out for whatever reason, and I could always blame those things if I wanted to.
right, right.
um, but for me, I mean, I guess like you just have to trust that when you find that person that loves you, they love every part of you, and they don't see those things. I've had relationships in the past where, um, you know, the people that I were with, they really truly adored me, but I held them back, and I knew it, and I knew that they didn't have trust that I could do everything that they could do. And it wasn't until I met my husband that he really made me see that he actually did believe that I could do everything that I wanted to do and everything with him, and didn't see the things that I was insecure about. And I mean, I remember like the first time I was like washing my catheter in the sink, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And he's like, "What? I don't even know what you're like." He didn't even see it. It didn't even like
It
something
didn't
that.
phase him.
No, not at all. And and I will tell you that from the time I met him, he was living in North Carolina at the time, and I was in Colorado. So we had like this like Skype thing. He came out
But
to
how
visit.
did you meet though?
So we met at a swim meet. I was actually swimming the Paralympic trials in 2012, trying to make the Paralympics,
What?
and he was coaching a little person who was also trying to make the team. And we had seen each other on deck and kind of like waved throughout the meet, but it wasn't until the very last night of the meet, right before my last event, I was like filling up my water bottle at the watering station, and he came over to say hi. And and we kind of played it off as like, here, I'll give you my email address and I'll tell you all about Paralympic swimming since you don't really know much. And I almost missed my last event that night, but long story short, like we just connected and connected so quickly. By the time, I mean, we met in a June. He came out to visit in August for a week. We
Nice.
camped and traveled around, and then we were married September 16th of that year.
Wow. That's the real deal right there.
I mean, it's just like, believe it or not, sometimes it just happens.
I do believe it. I do believe it. And that's why I keep going. That's why I keep sharing love because you give love, you'll get it back.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I have a question. So, with your second baby, going back to your pregnancy,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
did you now feel like, okay, now I know what to expect, or was it completely different than the first time?
Well, it was completely different because now I was like, I don't feel contractions. I don't know when I'm going to give birth. And so I was really adamant with my doctor, and it was like, what are we going to do this time to avoid me having a baby, in the middle of the night and me not even know or whatever.
Right.
And, and it was the same doctor I had with my firstborn. And, she just kept saying like, I think we'll be fine. You'll know, it'll be
Yeah.
great. And I was probably way more neurotic that time. And I mean, to the point where I actually ordered pH strips to test the fluid, that whatever fluid.
Yeah,
So,
to taste to test the acidity to see where you were, how close you were.
well, so it was like, is
The,
this pee or is this amniotic fluid? Is this
yeah.
pee? And so I was doing that all over the place. And so I had freaked myself out so much that I actually neglected to feel that I was actually feeling contractions that time. So we had finally planned to induce my pregnancy at 39 weeks on the day. And the day before that, I started having this weird side ache. And it was like, oh, I think this baby's just sitting funny in me. Like, I don't have that much space here and I'm sitting. And so it
Mhm.
was just like this weird side ache. And there was at one point, I went about my day. I coached a full swim meet that day, actually, and
Jeez.
and I kept telling my husband like, oh, it's so goofy, this feeling. I don't know. And at one point, I was like, should I time this? Should I see if it's like something that I feel at a certain time? And then I got distracted and kept going and did my thing. And my husband and I went out for dinner that night to celebrate that we were being induced the next day. No big deal. And I started noticing like, wow, I can even feel that in my teeth. Like, it's such a weird
Uh-oh.
pain.
Yeah, that's pain vibrating through your body.
Right. And I told him, he's
Yeah.
like, oh, it's fine, whatever. Went to bed, woke up the next morning leisurely, like went and got coffee and drove myself to the hospital, told my husband, like, don't come for a while. Like, if I'm being induced, it's going to take forever. I believe I checked in at 8 a.m. They hooked me up to the contraction monitor and realized that I was in active labor. He was born at 11 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had like,
Completely different.
yeah, but like also the same. Like I had hyper focused so much on not feeling it that I was feeling it and didn't feel it because of it.
And also a natural childbirth, or was that a
Yeah,
C-section?
it was. It was.
That's
It
natural.
was really
Wow.
quick. That one was like super quick.
And how old are your babies now?
7 and 2.5.
Whoa, you got your hands full.
I do.
And you're a writer. Wow, what an incredible story. This has been an amazing interview, Ryan. I can't believe we're out of time already. I want to keep going. So everybody, this is Ryan Rae Harbuck. She has an incredible story. This is the first time I speak to somebody paraplegics had kids, and it's really crazy, amazing, and ambitious of you, and also very, very motivating. One last question: what keeps you motivated? What keeps you going?
I think right now it's my kids.
Yeah,
For sure, it is my kids 100%. And giving them glimpses of the lessons and the perspectives that I've learned over so many years, without them necessarily having to go through the pain. And they will go through pain and they will struggle and they will suffer. But if I can give them and show them some of the things that I've learned, and, like I said, my struggles are my victories, and show them that. And I think that they do see that without realizing it, without recognizing it. Um,
right.
it's beautiful.
I'm writing this down because struggles are victories.
They are.
And those are the words, everybody, the wise words of Ryan Rae Harbuck. Struggles are victories. I look forward to our next interview because your book will be coming out in a couple months or so.
Yes, I'm really, really hopeful for January. Yeah, yeah. You know how it is.
And what do you already have the title of the book that's coming out?
I do, and it's a doozy. It's When I Grow Up, I Want to Be a Chair.
Wow. When I grow up, I want to be a chair. Well, I can't wait to talk about this new book of yours coming out, and hopefully by January, and that way we could talk about your book and the content that's in it, everything that you've gone through. And I'm really fortunate that I had the chance to meet you and interview you today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise. It was really nice to chat.
And I'll talk to you soon. You have a pleasant day now, the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay.